Okay, so welcome to the KingDependent Spotlight podcast. Today I have with me Lisa Adamson. So to give you a bit of background, on our Instagram profile, one day I saw Lisa, and it said on her profile, homeschool mom, author, mark making, child of God, lover of things beautiful and wise. And then I went to her website and saw that she writes books, and I saw that she was a former banker who now homeschools 4 children out of Ontario. And I just thought, this is someone who I need to talk to, because I've been talking about homeschooling, Christian schools for many years now, and saying that this is something that we need to do as believers because of the world that we are in. So I'm grateful to have you with us today, Lisa. And so I just want to find out everything about you and why you do what you do. So tell me about your upbringing.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for allowing me to be on your podcast today. Yeah, I'm glad that you reached out. And I am Canadian. I was born in Ontario, in Toronto to be specific. And I was born to 2 parents that migrated from Jamaica to here. Um, I think I had a pretty decent upbringing in terms of, you know, access to things that I needed. There was some, challenges growing up, which kind of informed the way that I wanted to raise my children and the
Mm,
type of home environment that I wanted to create, the type of marriage that I wanted. My upbringing kind of dictated that. So that brings me to here who I am today. Yes, as you mentioned, was a banker. I did work for Royal Bank for 15 years. I left in my 15th year. And it was a great journey for me. But when I hit close to just about a few weeks before my 40th birthday, I started reevaluating my life and
mm.
the things that I wanted. And I thought it was now or never. And that's when I started to make some significant changes in my life. So that's kind of where brings me to where I enter into homeschooling.
So when you came to these conclusions, what were the things that were making you think, I'm sure banking is quite lucrative, so that was a good income supply. What were the kind of things that made you think, okay, I'm going to give up this nice stream of money? And then I'm sure you must have had conversations with your husband as well. So like, what
Yes.
things were making you think this is something I need to do? I need to take this leap of faith.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that directed that. So in the year 2000, I actually became a Christian. So
Right.
I gave my life to God, and at the same time, my husband became a Christian. We weren't married at the time, but we did have a son together.
Right.
And so God started working in his life, started working in my life, and then we kind of reconciled and came back together. Um, how I came, so once we came in, again, like I said, I had this kind of what I wanted, a vision for what I wanted for my family. I wanted to have order. I wanted my children to have liberty. I wanted my children to um, learn without restraint, with freedom. These are some of the mindsets I had kind of going in the background.
Yeah.
And so when I had my second son, no, my third son, sorry, my second son was just about to start kindergarten.
Yeah.
And I was really concerned. So I started homeschooling him during my maternity leave.
Wow.
And my maternity leave was for a year. So after a year, lapsed, probably like at the 11th month, I was getting really anxious. I was like, how am I can't homeschool because we're dependent on our incomes, both my husband and I.
Yeah.
My husband has supported it from the jump. So he's always been like, yes, we
Mm.
want to homeschool. I had friends in church that, not a lot of families, but a few families that homeschooled. So I kind of watched and saw how they do. And I really admired the
Yeah.
lifestyle. Like I really admired it. I knew like, that they were making sacrifices because they put some things on the back burner financially
Right.
because they were investing in their children's education. So they didn't buy the big house and the two-car garage. They put that on the back burner, and their focus was to educate their children. So I love that. I really love seeing that type of dynamic, this sacrificing for the next generation, this investing in the next generation, and willing to put everything aside and kind of reconfigure how you look at the world, this idea of, the American dream or the Canadian dream, and reevaluating what that looks like. So I love that. That was wonderful. So back to when I was on mat leave. So we were helping with a church, and the pastor's wife was a homeschooling mom. And I was just talking to her and saying, I'm going to be going back to work in a couple of weeks, and I'm really, like, I can't afford to be home. And she was just encouraging me and saying, the Lord is going to work it out for you. And she gave me like 10 books on homeschooling and sent me home with that. I read them all. But on that same day, um, my husband and I and the family went out to a restaurant, and a stranger just came and started prophesying to us. Just said,
Wow.
I want you to know this is what the Lord says, that He is going to provide for you, and you do not need to be worried about your children's education. And as he came, he left. He didn't leave a name. He didn't say, "Hi, my name is Joe," nothing. He just left. And so I wrote that down. And that was kind of the catalyst for me trying to put things in motion, saying, okay, this is God. God is saying, this is direction. Also, I have an older son, like I mentioned, my first son, and with him in the school system, there was a lot of struggling. I was always having to advocate for him, not because he had any, identifiable learning disabilities or anything, but he was getting a lot of um, issues with the structural setup there.
Yeah.
So, for example, when he got to high school, they have, like these three streams in high school, like, which is advanced, which prepares you for university, and then there's the next level, I don't remember what it's called, which prepares you for like college, and then there's basic. And the guidance counselor looked me in the face and said, "Your son, you should put him in the basic stream. He's not really we don't think that he would be a good fit for the university stream. Like, we don't want to see him fail. And so putting him in basic." She didn't recommend the middle stream, but she said the basic. And I was like, no, this is no. So I went in there and I was like, "You're going to put my child in advanced classes." And, he kind of struggled a bit, but he did it.
Yeah.
And then he got into, some company that was kind of influencing. So I pulled him out of school for a semester, and I said, "You're either getting an education or you're getting an education." Like, there was no choice about it. I'm not going to put you in the school system and have you flounder all over the place. And so for a semester, I homeschooled him. After that one semester, he said, "Mom, I'm ready to go back to school." And he had the mind. He went back to school, and he just focused 195% focused, and he's doing his master's today. This
Wow.
is the same child that the school system said he should be put in the basic stream because we just don't want to see him fail. So that was the thing that said, I'm not allowing my second son and my third son to go through the same thing.
Yeah.
And so that's when I was like, okay, I have to find a way to homeschool. So I kept praying about it. And then, like I said, just before I turned 40, like the Lord was like, you have to trust me at some point. A few years have passed, maybe about 7 years. You have to trust me. And so my husband and I just decided, okay, you're going to put in a resignation, and we're going to believe that God's going to provide. At the same time, we launched a business, and since then, that business has been carrying us to this day.
Wow. So this is like heaven for me, because this is just so much kingdom stuff here. I'm just like, wow. So now, so you're running now like a what I like to call a KingDependent business, which would run on kingdom principles. So what is
Yes.
the business? If you don't mind talking about it, what is this
No,
business?
I don't mind.
Yeah.
So we operate a post-construction cleaning business. So we work with exclusively with builders. That's what we
Yeah.
do. We work on the construction site with builders, and we help them through various stages to prepare their homes for their new homeowners. And that's basically what we do.
And so when did you have this idea to start this business? Was this around the time you were thinking about homeschooling, or did it come before?
So the business idea was always there, but there was this fear to leave the salary and to leave the benefits and
Right.
to launch out into the deep, and then we had, kind of our mortgage and all these things were being supported by our salary. So we didn't have that luxury of just walking out. But it did take, the Lord saying, like, you have to trust me if this is what you want to see. I've given you the prophecy, I've laid it on your heart, I provide you with materials, I put people in your pathway, I've given you examples. You've got to trust me by faith. And so that's where, my husband was like, he calls me Lise. He's like, okay, Lise, we're gonna do it now. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it now. I'm gonna support you. We're gonna do it 100%. And the minute we did that, like everything started coming together. Finances to cover their curriculum. Access to resources. You
Yeah.
just become more resourceful. So yeah, it definitely was God in the midst. Like I could never take credit and say, I had this wonderful idea, I had all this money, and so no, it was actually definitely the leading of the Holy Spirit.
And that's what I think a lot of times stops people from really pressing into their purpose, especially when it comes to stuff like this, because the fear and the doubt and the anxiety, because I know so many believers who are principals and teachers, and I'm like, there's enough in one church for you to start a school. Why don't you do it? But I don't think
Yes,
we hear enough stories like yours. I don't think people understand that nothing great comes without sacrifice. I mean, the God we serve, the Bible we read, everything comes through a leap of faith. We look at Hebrews when it talks about all these great people who had to go through all these great things, but it was faith that did it. So it's amazing to hear that when you just trust in God and when you have a vision, a purpose, and a focus, and it's aligned with kingdom principles, you can't fail. Um,
absolutely.
and I even see, is this your classroom that you're in right now?
Yeah, this is our schoolroom.
So have you taken on any other children from any other homes? Has that been something you thought about, or um
Um, in the early days, I did have like a family member's son. He was with us for a little bit.
yeah,
But then the mom decided to put him into the school system. He needed some help with reading. So
yeah,
we just, working through a phonics-based program to bring him kind of up to speed. But her goal was always to have him in the school system. She just wanted him to have that support.
yeah,
Aside from that, no, I've really focused on my children.
yeah.
And I haven't taken anyone in.
Have you would you do that in the future? Because your children are going to come to a stage when they fly the nest that they leave. So what is your plan after they go?
Yeah, so I have one now that I'm just starting in JK. That's my little one, my daughter. And then I have my son who's just in grade 9, about to go into grade 10,
Oh,
high school. So, there's a huge gap.
yeah.
I may later on, yes, consider bringing in someone more closer to my daughter's age, just
Mm,
more for, because it's easier to teach one grade level or at least two,
yeah.
close to each other, because right now I've always had a huge gap between my kids are all spread out, so I've always
Yeah.
had a huge gap between them. Yeah.
So
So,
you're going to be busy for a long time.
oh yeah, they're gonna keep me employed.
So what is it? What has been the impact on their lives socially? Because a lot of people then now say, okay, I don't want to send my child, I don't want to homeschool, or I don't want to send my child to a Christian school because, maybe it's not got that many students and that, I don't want them to be socially underdeveloped. So how have you dealt with that?
Yeah. So there's a couple things that we've done. One is like we joined co-op. So we have a co-op that we, other Christian homeschoolers
Right.
that we get together with, and we do, some like gym class or shop class or business class, like whatever classes that they plan for a specific slot in time. So the one that I joined, they have 3 terms. So each term they offer different selections.
Right.
So that's kind of, they get an opportunity to socialize with kids kind of cross age, not just their age, but
Yeah.
many ages. And I think that has helped my children with socializing. They're very, very comfortable with engaging in conversation.
Yeah.
They're quite outspoken.
Yeah.
Um, and then also the beauty of homeschooling, for us specifically, is that sometimes my husband travels to other countries because he also is a minister, like he preaches the
Yeah.
gospel. So my middle son has had the opportunity to go to England a couple of times. He's gone to Mississippi. He's gone into different states in the U.S. He's had the opportunity to visit the White House. So he's had those different opportunities. So in terms of getting out, socializing, there's many opportunities for kids, to socialize. Sometimes you might even have to dial it back because there's so many things going on, like
Yeah.
school trips and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely I don't think socialization is an issue at all.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I know that I think that's kind of in the category of a myth
Mhm.
because many of the homeschool families that I've met are happily adjusted. Maybe in the older days, I'm not sure, I can't speak to that, but
Yeah.
maybe like, many decades ago when homeschooling was new and people were homeschooling strictly for, religious reasons, they were more isolated. But now there's so many people that are homeschooling that, like for example, in our homeschool, there's over 50 kids.
Wow.
Yeah, in our homeschool co-op. So lots of opportunity to meet people from different cultures, different backgrounds and
Yeah.
experience. So we've always lived in a city. We recently moved onto a homestead. So now we're in a rural community. So it's a whole new experience. And homeschooling allows us that flexibility to
Yeah.
look at life outside of the box.
Wonderful. And just for the listeners who are going to be watching this, I deliberately did not speak to Lisa before this interview to get any information because I wanted it to be authentic. So, is your husband Pastor Adamson?
Yes, that's my husband.
So,
He's
I
Pastor
actually
Adamson.
went to a service a couple of months ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I met your son, and your son, I think he even came up to me and talked to me. So I can tell the listeners her children are fine. They're not weird. They're not socially like awkward. He came up to me and talked to me. We had a good conversation, and yeah. So I've
Nice.
met your husband and I've met your son. So yeah,
Oh,
I saw your
awesome.
name and I thought maybe that must be your husband, but I didn't know. But now we've confirmed it.
Oh,
So yeah,
wow. It's
so yeah,
wonderful.
I met your son. And I can be socially awkward because I don't always go up to people and speak because sometimes I'm just like, but he came up to me and talked to me and we had a good conversation. And I actually enjoyed it because when you go to a church and you don't know anyone, it can be awkward, but he made me feel very
Mhm.
comfortable. So
Nice. Nice.
yeah, that was one of your oldest ones. I think
Yeah.
he said he went to London. I think it was the one who went to London.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I have an older son who's
Yeah,
27, I think,
yeah,
27. And then I have one that is 21. That's Gabriel. He's traveled to London. Yeah, he's
I think
traveled
that was
to those
it.
places. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So how has your family dynamic changed? So, in the early stages, you had your children going out to school and you are both going to work. Has this brought your family closer together?
Definitely. Absolutely. Because, when you first transition from school to homeschool, you do, especially I grew up in the school system, you have that school system mindset,
Yeah.
right? So I tried to initially duplicate school in the home,
Mhm.
but what happens is your environment changes, your mindset changes because it becomes, homeschooling becomes, not just a method, but it's more of an experience.
Mhm.
And so, like simple things like going out into nature, observing things has made my children more observant about things around them and in the world. And so we're always in conversation. We're always in discourse about different things. We're always bouncing ideas. My kids are always, processing even current events. And this
Right.
is being filtered through things that we've learned, compared to things that so it's a whole environment and an experience. Um, yeah, that's how I would
Wonderful.
explain it.
And in terms of the actual practicalities of setting up your homeschool, what did you have to do with regards to, the government? Because I know if you pull your child out of school, you can't just pull your child out of school. You've got to notify the government. What did you have to do in
Yes.
practical terms to establish the homeschool?
Yeah, so in practical terms, like I mentioned, I live in Ontario, and I was in Brampton, Mississauga, so that's the Peel region,
Yeah.
and I found that my experience was actually very smooth and
Mhm.
user friendly. Basically, I had to print off a form. I'm sorry I don't have the name of the form, but there's a form that
Yeah.
you print off. You complete it. What you're going to do is put your name of your children and their ages and the year. And I don't know if you even mentioned the school that they're enrolled in, if they're enrolled. And then you send it to there's a liaison, and you send it to that person, and basically that person sends you back a letter saying, "I acknowledge that you're homeschooling your kids this year." and you send it year after year. And that it's been actually very smooth, very nice, and in terms of setting up the the legal side of it.
Yeah.
Also, being registered with I think it's called Homeschool Legal Defense
Right.
association. Getting a registration with them is just what it is. It's like a team of lawyers and legal people that you
Yeah.
kind of subscribe to, and if you ever run into a situation, they will come and defend you because you're already covering the cost. There's no additional cost. So there's just a few boards that you would register with. Just just kind of it's a community, and having access to information, and with the advent of technology, these things are so accessible online. You don't have to do paperwork, all that. It's all available to do it online. So those are some of the technical things that I had to do to set up.
Right. And so in regards to sitting exams and getting qualifications, do your children have to go to like a school or a building to sit those exams, or do they sit them at home?
That is optional if you want to put your kids through what they call, I think it's called the EQAO testing,
Right.
just to see how they're doing, but it's not necessary. You
Okay.
are actually fully accountable for all of their schooling.
Oh, wow. So now in
Yeah.
terms of getting to like university, how would that,
Yep.
how would you go about that now?
Okay, so there's several ways that people do it. So I can't speak to every, there's so many, there's a multiplicity of how you can access university. You can go as a mature student, you can do dual credit in high school so that you kind of easily transition. What I did was I homeschooled up until grade 11. And then for the last year, we looked at the university that my son was interested in. And those are the courses. So there's 6 courses that are required.
Right.
So those are the things that he worked on.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
So now with all of this kingdom building and KingDependence, as I like to call it, there must have been some opposition. Tell me about the opposition internally, externally, everything.
Yeah. So let me start with internally, if I can recall some of the opposition. So, like you mentioned before, there's the element of fear. That's a huge one, but it's what the fear is attached to. So, like, my parents are pretty educated. My mom was a teacher back home.
Right.
So for them, they were highly invested in the system.
Mm,
And so when I initially told my parents that, oh, I want to be a stay-at-home mom and I want to homeschool my kids, my dad's response was like, why do you want to do that? Your mom worked. You know what I mean? So, and then they started mentioning stuff like the socialization, how they're going to have access to the kids are going to be backwards, all those things. So those were things that I had to contend with for years. And year after year, I had to reevaluate myself, reevaluate the circumstances, situations. There's those things. As well as like there's the economic year after year, buying new curriculum. Do I buy new curriculum? Do I source some stuff free online? How do I do this? So that for me was a matter of prayer. Like I would actually put the children's year before the Lord and say, okay, God, you know where you want them to be. You know what the finished product looks like. What are the courses that we should be doing? What should I be focusing on? What should I be teaching them at this moment? What should I give them access to? What should I be involved in? Give me direction for those things. And it would usually work out. Starting my year with a kind of vision. So I'd have like a one word. So for example, last year, consistency was the vision that kind of drove the year. And so we studied scriptures in our morning time that focused on consistency, and then we implemented those behaviors in how we went about our schoolwork. External opposition. I mean, you always have the adversary in terms of, like I said, working with the school system has been pretty smooth. But sometimes your children see things that, might think that are my parents doing right by me? Are they causing me to be, cut off from certain things? And it's sometimes it's time that has to prove that, yeah, mom and dad are making the right decision. So those are some of the things. But what I would recommend is always walking with your children. Like I've established with my children from the jump that I am here 100%. I want to see you succeed. And I am going to raise the bar and push you to the highest that I can. And then if you decide, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that, that's fine. But I want to open the access. So, for example, to provide materials, I would thrift a lot. So I'd, buy a secondhand guitar, buy a secondhand piano, buy things that my kids, buy a secondhand microscope, buy those things and make sure that they're here, they're present, so that they are inspired by the things that they see and that are around. And they know that mom is not only speaking, but setting up the environment that you have access to do what you need to do. So I think hopefully that answers your question.
And you tapped into one of my last questions was, what advice would you give to parents who they want to send their child to a Christian school or they want to homeschool, but they just don't have the money and they don't see the money? And oftentimes churches are just not very kingdom orientated, so the churches are not providing any teaching or preaching or funding for this type of thing, and they just feel like, what do I do? What would you say to that parent? But they have your vision, but they don't have your resources right now.
Right. So the first thing I would say is pray, put it before God, petition the Lord, because God is concerned about what you're concerned about. And God is concerned about your children. God is concerned about your family. Um, One of the things that I always share when I'm speaking is that God has a vision for your family, right? And so he is fighting for your family because he has a vision for your family. So you want to align yourself with God. So that's the first thing. The next thing would be like in terms of, because Christian schools can be expensive. I've thought about Christian schools, but it was cost prohibitive for me. So homeschooling is a good opportunity. There are many resources out there. You can even homeschool and work at the same time. It's just being creative with how you do it. Maybe you're not homeschooling first thing in the morning. Maybe it's in the afternoon, or maybe it's a chunk in the morning and then a chunk in the afternoon. Like you just have to be willing to think outside of the box. I don't want to go too long, but one of the persons that really inspires me from the Bible is Peter. If we step back and look at Peter from a carnal perspective, we would think that he was unstable. Just the way he seemed somewhat impetuous. But the fact that he stepped out of the boat onto the water, that is what inspires me when I'm afraid, when I'm scared. It's like if I don't step out of the boat, I will never walk on the water towards Jesus. So that's been the huge thing. And that's what I would tell the parents is that what another thing that has motivated me is like when you tell me no, I can't do it, if God permits it, I'm doing it. It may take me a while, but I'm going to do it. So, for example, when they're like, no, you can't homeschool, I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get there. I'm going to homeschool. When they were like, okay, no, you can't farm because, people in my complexion are not really out in rural Ontario. I was like, okay, the opportunity when it comes, we're going to seize it. So that's another thing is that fear and that pushback can actually be the catalyst that makes you move forward, because that's where you're hitting that wall, that box that's trying to contain you, right? That no that is coming from everybody, even your own voices, is sometimes that box that's trying to shut you in. So pushing against that and being willing to leap over the wall, that's what I would advise parents: be willing to leap over the wall. I mean, if you go and you launch out and you homeschool and that first year was shipwreck and you feel like you failed, then you can say, okay, well, let me you know, go back into the school system then. I'm almost certain that if you take that step and you're sincere, you're not going to fail and you're going to begin to see the benefits. So those are the few thoughts that I would share with anyone that's looking into homeschooling or alternative education.
Wonderful. And you actually just said something there that triggered me, because one of the things I've also taught about and preached about is growing our own food. I mean, when Jeremiah was telling the Israelites what to do when they get into Babylon, I think it was build your own houses, plant your own food, and marry each other and multiply. So look, having our own resources and growing our own food is so important. So now you're farming. Tell me about this farming adventure.
Yes. So Michael, that is kingdom mind. Being sustainable. God is your provider. I believe that that's kingdom mind. That's what I believe is king dependent is, saying, okay, Lord, provide the rain. The seeds that I've planted, provide the rain, multiply. So my husband is from Jamaica.
Yeah.
And he's got a, background farming, growing his own callaloo when he's back home, raising animals. He has that, he's from the country. And when we first got married, we've always, I'm going to use this word delicately, but we've always lusted after farmland. We've always just like, whenever we drive into the country, like, oh man, it would be if God could just bless me with that land, or if God could just bless me with a land like that. And that's kind of, we didn't really look at it as prayer, but that was our heart's cry.
Yeah.
And, just like at the tail end of the pandemic, an opportunity came up. So we sold our home and we moved. We took a leap of faith. We moved about an hour and a half away from where we were. And we're here on this land and we're learning a lot because it's very different. And like I said, there's not a lot of people that look like us, but the Bible says that there's going to be a multitude of people that stand before the throne of God. I'm paraphrasing here, and so I'm not looking at people's faces. I'm looking at where God has me and what God is doing. And my husband is kind of the spearhead with this one. Being here on the land and stuff, but I'm just here 100%, and he's growing his callaloo. We're slowly, again, like I said, learning about the seasons and learning about when to plant and, what to be doing and when to start seeds. And again, because we're homeschooling, we have this flexibility. Farming is now becoming, integrated into our curriculum, right? So we're learning about all these things. So again, like I said, that with us, it was that first little step. I'm going to launch out into homeschool. And that was like we broke the ice. And so now, we're willing to take other steps. And again, people on the outside may say this is foolhardy. You're taking chances like this. What are you guys thinking? But then I look at Peter, and it's like I want to walk on the water. And I can't do that if I don't step out. So it's been a wonderful experience. The people where I live, the previous homeowners did a great job setting up a homestead. So a lot of the infrastructure is here. It's just us learning how to use these things. It has definitely been a learning experience for all of us.
Wonderful. And I just want to show people how much in the word we are now, because I found that scripture that I was talking about, Jeremiah 29:5. Build ye houses. Actually, let me go to verse 4. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon. We're in Babylon, folks, if you didn't know. Build ye houses and dwell in them, and plant gardens and eat fruit of them. Take ye wives and beget sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons, and give your daughters to husbands, that they may bear sons and daughters, that ye may be increased there and not diminished, and seek the peace of the city whither I have caused you to be carried away captives, and pray unto the Lord for it, for in the peace thereof shall ye have peace.
Yes. And amen.
This is what we are to do. And it's sometimes, unfortunately, we get carried away in, doctrines of this and doctrines of that, but actually God said that Jesus came that we might have life and have it more abundantly. So yes, we want to go to heaven, but how do we live righteously and soberly right now? How do we impact the world? How do we build the kingdom? And here is the way. The Indians do it, the Jews do it, the Muslims do it. They go, they increase, they build, they plant, and we're like, oh, why can they have this big temple? Why can they have this? They have it because they actually follow scriptural principles, and we ain't doing it. And when we have the book. So it's so amazing and good to see and to hear someone doing it, because what you are is confirmation of what I've been saying for years, that we need to be doing, and my generation needs to pick this up. I understand that our elders might not have had the mind or the resources or the information, but there's no excuse for my generation. So I just need to, when I want to promote and to put more stories like yours out there, I'm going to be coming to your feet to learn about farming and about everything you're doing, because I want to know. And I have that same desire you have. And I'm at the beginning of starting my family. And also I want to promote your book, which I have bought. It's called Brown Skin, Brown Spice, Portraits of Color and Spice, Lisa Adamson. So I've bought this book for my child who's not here yet. He should be here at the end of July. And I'll give
Congrats.
this to him. So tell me your inspiration behind this book.
Yeah, so a couple of things inspired that. Mainly my children. They're different complexions, but we're darker. And my oldest son, some things don't spill out of your kids until they're older. They keep things in. And we were sitting down and talking, and he, told me some names that he used to be called at school,
Wow.
because of his complexion. And then I had another conversation with my other son, and he also mentioned, you know, the same thing. So those are some of the, I want brown children, brown families, to know that their skin is beautiful. That's it on the basic level,
Yeah.
and that our culture is beautiful. I'm out here in, there's not a lot of people from my culture here, but we grow our callaloo, and we plan to share that, to share, the benefits of callaloo and so forth. And so the thought behind the book was just to create a space for brown children to know that they're important and that they can dream. If you notice, one of the profiles, the little girl lives on a homestead. I want them to see themselves in different places and different spaces. That is what has motivated me. You don't always have to live the way we have traditionally lived. You know, um, as far as being, migrating to Canada and, living within the city and living within, and following a certain trajectory, that you can let God lead you outside of the box, lead you outside of things that constrain you because of, the way that we interpret scripture, or because of culture, or, you know, um, things like that, so that was the motivation. I just wanted to speak to our brown kids and let them know that they're beautiful, their complexions are beautiful, and there's diversity within our community, and I wanted them to appreciate that. Another thing is, my sister's a lot lighter than me, my mom's a lot lighter than me. When I was growing up, my parents kind of, we moved to Mississauga, and back then they used to call it booney, or bush, you know and I was like, one of six black students in a school, and so I didn't see a lot of my reflection. So I wasn't, affirmed. And I wanted to be, a vessel for affirming beauty in our complexion. So that was really what motivated the book.
That's wonderful. Is there anything else you're doing that you would like to speak about or promote, and to, give us your social media handles and how we can contact you? Because I know you're doing a lot more. So tell us about that and how we can
Yeah,
contact
I am. So this is coming down the pipeline. It's not now yet, but I am working on some homeschool resources, like planning, setting up an agenda, mapping out your day, some elements. So I hope to share that soon, at least before September and the school year kicks off again. I've also written a ladies' devotional. It's called Cultivating Patience, Experience, and Hope. Because I'm just going to show you what the cover looks like. So that's what it looks like there. Um, so that's kind of what I'm working on. But right now, I'm just focusing on homeschooling my children and just learning about this land, learning about farming, learning about country life. That's really, so I'm quite busy. And yeah, so that's what's happening. We also, have a ministry in Brampton. So we've got a lot going on. We have a lot going on.
And we can get to you at ms.lise__ on Instagram. And I think your website is www.lisasimoneadamson.com. And I will put the links to all of this stuff on YouTube and on Instagram when we put this out. Thank you so much for doing this interview. I'm so inspired. I'm so encouraged. I think it's just amazing to hear real life story of faith and of God and of the kingdom being built and being established. And I just want everyone who possible to hear this in the kingdom, because as you said, sometimes through interpretation or the way we interpret scripture or just what we've been handed down, we miss out on the fullness of of the joy that we can have in this world. I always say to my mom has like, Mom, you need to, she's well past retirement. I was like, Mom, you need to travel the world. Everything God put here is for you. Go and see Greece. Go and see this. He didn't put you here to just stay in your house. Like, the world is here for you to explore and enjoy. So I'm just so grateful to see and to hear what you're doing. And I'm sure we'll have more conversations in the future if you allow it. And thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Yes, Michael, thank you for having me. It's a blessing to share what's happening, and it's lovely what you're doing, creating, a platform to share, the work of God in our life and helping us to, structure our businesses and our homes. So that's wonderful, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
All right, thank you.